Hello there, this is Austin with Blot Gaming, and I'm here to talk to you today about some quick ways to accumulate money before going into the EXP weekend that starts on, I believe, the 23rd. It's the 23rd of September this month. So, this guide is oriented toward people who are of a lower level because most people who've been around for a while have levels in the upper 80s, 90s, etc. really don't need help. They know where to make money, it's just a matter of doing it. So, here's what you're going to need to follow this guide. First and foremost, your combat stats should be in the level 50 to 60 range, high enough to wear the highest tier free-to-play armor, or, if you can afford it, Dragon, the lowest tier members armor. You will have to have an active RuneScape membership. Membership has more content, more variety in what you can do, those sorts of things. It's just a more efficient way to go about things all around. Beyond that, the only requirement is the completion of Priest in Peril, which is one of the early members-only quests in RuneScape, and 60 Slayer. And the reason for requiring the quest and 60 Slayer is because we're going to be going to the Aberrant Spectres in the Canvas Slayer Tower. Now, I realize that to some people, 50 in your combat stats and 60 Slayer sounds like a lot, but one of the key features of this guide is that it's able to be done quickly once you get to that point. You take an hour out of your time during EXP weekend and you can rack up some nice cash. So why not use EXP weekend to meet some of these requirements, 50 combat, 60 Slayer, and then proceed from there. So, in making this guide, I made use of the following. I equipped rune plate legs and a rune plate body, as well as a ring of wealth, just for the extra drops we'll be getting. I'm not certain it helps with Slayer monsters, but you don't really need any other ring, and it helps keep the cost of entry to this guide low. And an Amulet of Glory. For a weapon, I used a rune warhammer, and the monster we're slaying requires you to be wearing a nose peg to prevent them from doing their negative effects to you, so no helmet there. So I went with all free-to-play gear except for the Ring of Wealth and I think the Amulet, but the main gear is free-to-play. That way, if someone is just jumping into members for the EXP weekend, they should be good to go. The total cost of this gear is about 137k. It'll change, depending on what the GE is looking like that day, or if you can make the materials yourself. But, as much as that sounds like, we'll be making vastly more than that in the next hour. So, I didn't use any prayer. I didn't use the evolution of combat. This is all done with legacy combat. And while my stats are higher than those that this guide is targeted toward, the gear is really what matters. I can have 90 strength, and if I'm using a rune warhammer, my damage is still about what you would expect. So, the Canvas Slayer Tower, like I said, is accessed by moving through from Varrock's east side and completing the Priest in Peril quest. Really short quest. And then the Canvas Slayer Tower is almost immediately after that. If you haven't done Aberrant Spectres before, they're on the second floor of the Slayer Tower on the right-hand side. You go through a gate and they'll attack you. They are aggressive monsters, which is one of the reasons I chose them for this guide, because it's much more low-intensity action than going and trying to boss or do other things that require you to actively click. In addition, the money that comes from them isn't in the form of rare 1 in a million drops like the Dragon Pickaxe or many of the drops from, say, KBD. It's steady, medium income drops that you can accumulate over time. Some of these drops, the ones that are of the most note, are the mid-level herbs that they drop, Quarm, Ranarr, those sorts of things, in varying rarities. But more commonly, they drop Swamp Tar in batches of 25. This is a non-noted but stackable drop, which comes to about 4k per drop. They can also drop Rune Full Helms, Rune Maces, and some seeds here and there we'll go over in more detail what they drop once I'm showing off the loot. But the big ticket item is called Ghostly Essence, and it drops it in batches of 7 to 16. It goes between 80 and 250-ish K for a given drop. It's a pretty rare drop, but it's not unheard of. I got 2 of them over the course of this. So, to get to the Canvas Slayer Tower and supply and, you know, do all of that back and forth, because that'll take multiple trips, I recommend using the Canvas Bank, which is where I happen to be standing at the moment. It's not terribly far away, well within running distance, and you go to the bank, you grab your food and any other items you're bringing, and then you make your way back to the tower. For food, if your constitution is above 56, I recommend monkfish. They run for about 340 GP apiece. Relatively low cost compared to something like sharks. But if your constitution is lower or you really don't want to spend, lobster will work just as well. Swordfish is about the same price as monkfish, so of those two I would use monkfish. So let's take a look at the loot we picked up. I have it all here in my inventory noted because it was easier than keeping track of it all in my bank. And if we pop open the price checker, we'll be able to evaluate roughly how much wealth is there. The GE price isn't always exactly what it'll go for. Sometimes it'll sell a little higher, a little lower, but this will give us a good rough estimate. So if we put 1 hour's worth of loot from them into the price checker, we see that it made about 515K. Considering that the cost of entry is 137K for your gear, plus, we'll call it 20 monkfish. I think I used 18. That's another 6K, 7K, thereabouts. Maybe 8 if you have to buy it a little higher. But you're talking less than 150K for 500K in 1 hour. And if we look through this, we can see there's the Swamp Tower. I picked up 200 of it over the course of an hour, and that's a fair chunk of change. That covers, what, 1/5 of our total cost by itself. The Rune Full Hounds, only 3 of them, but still a substantial amount of money. The Rune Maces, some of these herbs like the Cadentine, the Ranar, a couple of gems, but you don't really need to pick those up, they're pretty low value. Along the same note, they drop a lot of Snape Grass and Harlander and Guam, those other low-level herbs. You don't have to pick those up. I did for completion's sake, but all of the herbs drop noted. So if you can spare the inventory space instead of grabbing something like a Rune Mace, why not? They drop Janger berries, as well as some mushroom spores and some seeds. A fair amount of money, but it's, like I said before, about pooling these low drops over the course of an hour or two into something worth collecting. You know, you go fight KBD or something, you might make more than 515K in one lucky drop, but you're going to be there fighting a much harder enemy and hoping for a good drop. Here are the Ghostly Essences I spoke of. That came to about 200K in 2 drops of them, almost half of the total loot. You might get unlucky, or you might get really lucky. Like I said, this was done over the course of an hour. If you stick 2, 3, 4 hours in there, you're going to see a substantial increase as time goes on. But even if you only make 515K an hour, that's better than I was making when I was at a level appropriate to be fighting these monsters and fighting other things. Everyone's done big bones from giants, dragon bones, etc. This is an alternative that, with the cost of having to have these Slayer levels. I hope this is helpful to people. Let us know down in the comments below what you thought, and if you'd like to see more guides like this. Have a good double EXP weekend.